Well, 2024 is coming to a close, which means that it's time for me to give my predictions on who I think the champions will be come the end of 2025. Now, I could have made it easy and just been like, man, by the time we start 2025, who are the champions going to be? And I could have gotten 100% accuracy there. But we're going to predict and have some fun with this of who I believe is going to, by this time next year, the UFC is going on its little break. We're getting ready for the new year. Who will the champions be with the belt around their waist? I think that we are going to see some very interesting things happen in 2025. And not only am I going to predict who I think the champion will be, but I'm going to kind of give you the roadmap of how I think this goes and who potentially could be some of those hard matchups for some of the guys in the division and how I see the belt changing over and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll discuss all of that in this video. But if you enjoy these types of videos, do me a favor, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It all helps me out tremendously. But let's waste no time and hop into this because, man, we have some very interesting champs thus far, right? This is what I've said, for the first time in a while. We have a very balanced out sport, right? We have a lot of different style of champions. We have guys that are strikers, guys that are well-rounded, guys that are more grappler-based. And I find it very, very exciting. And what we've seen so far at 125 pounds is it's just been basically dominated by one guy for a number of years right now, right? It's been Alessandro Pantoja ever since he was able to go in there and take the belt off of Brandon Moreno. He's just been that guy, right? People have not had the answer for him, even though he had a close fight with Steve Erceg. And yeah, he's, been challenged. But what we've seen with Pantoja is he's got a well-rounded skill set. I mean, this was a guy out there doing, Uber Eats or whatever, delivering stuff, and he has cemented himself now as, hopefully the UFC is paying this guy well, because not only have I said, do I think he's the most underrated, fighter in UFC history, he's definitely the most underrated champion in UFC history. And, I'm going to keep beating that drum. I know it's, people are like, Jake, stop talking about it. But look, it's the truth. This guy is well-rounded, and it is going to take a Herculean effort to go in there and beat Alessandro Pantoja because he is scrappy on the feet, he's got outstanding grappling, and he's got very, very good submissions, and he is always up for a dogfight. No matter what kind of fight you want, Pantoja has the recipe for that. I believe that Alessandro Pantoja stays champion in the flyweight division through 2025. Now, I do have an asterisk here, okay? So Alessandro Pantoja, I think he's going to be the champion. But there's something that the UFC could do that I think could be a little bit of a curveball, which we'll discuss in just a second. But if there's anyone that's currently on the UFC roster that is going to cause Pantoja problems in a possible title fight, it's going to be Kai Kara-France in a rematch, right? And I know Kai Kara-France, he's had his opportunities here and there, but Kai Kara-France has outstanding takedown defense. He's got very good striking, and he has legit power in his hands for the flyweight division to where if he connects on Pantoja, I know that would be them running it back. I could see, Kai Kara-France having some success against Pantoja. But at the end of the day, guys, if you go in there and you're not able to finish Pantoja, you're probably not winning the fight, right? He's going to find a way to win. And I do think Kai Kara-France is a threat. Or the guy that just went in there at UFC Tampa against Bruno Silva, that version of Manel Kape, that was one of the best flyweights we've ever seen, right? That was a flow state 15-minute Manel Kape, who I've said before, Manel Kape is one of the most talented flyweights in the world, right? When he's letting the combinations fly. And I do think that he's scheduled to fight Brandon Royval. If he could go out there and he can add some things together and he could get a big win over Royval and find himself in a title opportunity, he could potentially be a problem for Alessandro Pantoja. But my wild card is going to be this. The UFC, right? They let this guy go, and, there were a number of things that we heard and blah, blah, blah. I want to see this guy back in the UFC. He just went in Brave, got an impressive first-round finish. I want to see Muhammad Mokaev back in the UFC, and I believe that if he comes back into the UFC, I don't think they walk him into a title shot. Unfortunately, as much as I think they could, considering the landscape of the flyweight division, I believe Muhammad Mokaev comes back into the UFC, gets himself a very impressive win to where it's like, well, we can't deny this guy anymore, and he goes in there, and I believe he has the skill set to beat Alessandro Pantoja. His striking has improved, and he has outstanding grappling. I believe that he is the only guy that can match the grappling of Pantoja in this weight class, because what we've seen from Alessandro, he's been basically the best grappler, right? Steve Erceg's got really good wrestling, and, you saw what Pantoja was able to do there, and I know it was a close fight. There were some good scrambles here and there, But Pantoja, if you're going to go in there with him, you have to be able to match the grappling, because you saw what happened with Kaya Sakura. He goes in there, he's got good striking, he's explosive, but he doesn't have the grappling to be able to defend. I believe Muhammad Mokaev could be the guy to dethrone Alessandro Pantoja. But again, the reason I'm going a little bit of a wild card here is because I don't know the timeline of Mokaev being back. I think he will be back in the UFC at some point. But if they re-sign him and it's almost the end of the year, like, obviously, so that wouldn't work. But if he gets back in soon enough in 2025, gets an impressive win, and they're able to turn him around, I think that he could be the guy to dethrone Pantoja. But if that fight doesn't happen, I still think Pantoja stays on top at 125 pounds. Moving on to the 135-pound division. So currently right now we have Merab Dvalishvili, right? He is currently the champion, and he is scheduled for the very first big pay-per-view of the year. That is going to be UFC 311. The main event is Islam Makhachev defending against Arman Tsarukyan in the rematch. And the co-main is Merab versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, I've made multiple videos. You guys, if you follow my channel, know where my thoughts have been, and that is Merab did not want this fight, right? At the end of the day, he signed, and they're like, he ran in here and was asking for this fight. I don't think that that's what happened, right? And who knows? We don't know, but that's what they said, and it almost comes off as like, well, they're trying to do Merab a favor here, because ever since Jan went out there and put on a masterclass against Davison Figueiredo, right, and then he goes out there, and defends against Sean O'Malley, he's like, I want the O'Malley rematch, or I want to fight Petr Yan again. And everyone's like, oh yeah, they're like believing Merab, like, oh yeah, those are the hardest challenges for him, right? No, they aren't the hardest challenges for him. What Merab is essentially trying to do, in all fairness, is what they ultimately did for Sean O'Malley. Cherry pick a free title defense. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, well, they had to run that back with O'Malley versus Vera because, Marlon Vera got a win over O'Malley and it didn't even count. Well, it did count, right? He landed a shot on the perennial nerve and was able to get him out of there. So credit to Vera there. They could have waited to do that, right? That could have been another opportunity. Merab was the next in line. So it started this thing of cherry picking title fights. And Merab was like, look, O'Malley's got a pretty big fan base. Jan has a huge fan base. Let me fight one of those guys, right? People will tune in and watch me fight, because a lot of people aren't necessarily excited to tune in to watch Merab fight because of his style. But again, he's very effective at what he does, and he is an incredibly hard stylistic matchup. And he's a dangerous opponent, considering that what you're up against. And he was trying to cherry pick a better stylistic matchup to where he could probably go out there and run through Jan again, or just take Sean O'Malley down and beat him again. He avoided the hardest challenge in the division, which is the guy that can beat him and has all of the answers, and that is Umar Nurmagomedov. I believe come early 2025, because it's the first pay-per-view of the year, we will see the Bantamweight division flip hands, and we will see Umar win the title. Now, a lot of people just say, oh, well, Umar's going to run through him, or Merab's going to run through him. I think this is going to be a very competitive fight. I don't expect this to be total domination by Merab. I don't expect this to be total domination by Umar, no matter which side of the fence you are on in terms of who you think is going to win. But, I mean, newsflash right here, obviously, with me picking this, I think Umar's going to win this fight. But for me, it's going to have to be by finish. I think that this fight has to be by finish for Umar, because in a scenario of, I heard Khabib talking about, with Henry Cejudo, if Islam and Bilal had to fight down the line, well, what happens there? Khabib's like, you can't control Bilal for 25 minutes. Brother, you cannot control him for 25 minutes. And I think that is the same exact analysis when looking at Merab. I don't think anyone can take Merab down and control him for 25 minutes. That's not going to happen. I don't think it does. I mean, I'd be shocked. As good of a grappler as Umar is, I mean, Merab's a damn good grappler as well. So I don't know that he would be able to control him for 25 minutes. So I think we are going to see Umar on the feet land some very good shots at Merab to where he's maybe able to clip him with something and then find a submission. Because Merab, he's a dominant decision win fighter. That is how he wins fights. He doesn't really knock anybody out. He doesn't really submit anybody. He wins a very dominant, lopsided decision. That is what makes Merab dangerous. He will not get tired, and he will shoot 50 million takedowns. I need someone that is designed to stop that. I believe that it is Umar. I believe Umar is a far better striker, and he obviously has outstanding grappling as well. He has very good control. He's very, very good in the scrambles. And I believe with his top pressure and the way that he combines, that Sambo style, with a lot of his other tools, he is the guy that could beat Merab. I think that he has a very good gas tank as well. Is it as good as Merab's? Probably not. I don't think anyone on planet Earth has a better gas tank than Merab. So the dude's an alien, but I believe that Umar has the game plan, has the ability to defend the takedowns of Merab, intimidate Merab from shooting so many takedowns because he does have submissions in his back pocket. And I think if the fight stays on the feet, we have seen guys like Henry Cejudo, Marlon Moraes land some good shots that have been able to wobble Merab. I think Umar has the skill set to do that. He's got nasty kicks. He's got very good timing on him, and they're hard to see coming. I believe Umar is the champion in 2025. Moving on to the featherweight division. Right now, currently, we have Ilia Topuria, one of the biggest stars in the UFC right now. A guy that is, he talks the talk, walks the walk. And he's coming off of 2 unbelievable back-to-back wins, and it's why I thought he should have been Fighter of the Year. He goes out there, UFC 298, KOs Alexander Volkanovski. Goes out there, UFC 308, KOs Max Holloway. That is back-to-back wins over not just 2 of the greatest featherweights of all time, 2 probably top 10 fighters of all time, possibly, right? You could definitely argue that, and especially in the featherweight division, 2 of the best of all time and 2 of the most well-liked fighters of all time in the UFC. So, Evel Knievel, Ilia Topuria going in there, being the villain, taking out everybody's favorite fighters. I'm like, stop it, man. He's like, I want to fight Oliveira. He wants to go in there and beat up on all the fan favorite fighters. That just seems like the goal of Topuria, but he's a dangerous guy. And in order to go in there and beat him, you really are going to have something special. And right now, considering the landscape of the 145-pound division, I don't think anybody beats him. I don't think anybody at featherweight beats Ilia Topuria. Now, we have heard him say, I'm done at featherweight. I'm going up to 55. I want to fight Oliveira. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm not motivated. And I think the UFC is going to sit him down at the end of the day and say, hey, man, that ain't happening. Look, you just won the belt. You're still young. No, shut up and do what you're told. As much as we like Ilia Topuria and he talks big game, I think the UFC is going to sit him down and say, okay, look, man, that ain't happening, right? You're still young. The weight cut thing, I know you're cutting a lot of weight, but not yet, right? Go out there, you defend the title. There's a very deserving couple contenders. We have Diego Lopez. We have Movsar Evloev. If you could go out there and defend against those 2, heck, maybe we'll just give you a double champ fight. We'll give you the opportunity to be a 2-belt winner instead of vacating and then going up and win the title, which maybe Ilia doesn't care, but that might be a way that the UFC tries to sway him into staying at featherweight, saying, look, man, you defend a time or 2 here. We'll let you go up and have that featherweight belt around your waist at the time to go up and try to be a double champ so you can hold both belts on your waist if you are able to win the lightweight title, which I know that maybe that doesn't mean, a ton, but it's still something, right? It's still kind of the aesthetic of that and the idea. And I believe that in order to be considered into the GOAT status, how many title defenses do you have, right? And I know that people want to be like, oh, well, he's got 50,000 title defenses. And it's like, okay, but we want quality, and sometimes instead of just the quantity. So I think a couple solid title defenses of Ilia Topuria would make it undeniable of him being the greatest featherweight of all time. I think skill-wise, he already is, right? But he's got to get a couple more defenses because we've seen what some of these other guys have been able to do at featherweight. But I don't think anybody beats Ilia, right? I think Movsar Evloev has the grappling and the wrestling for sure to cause some issues, but Ilia has really good grappling of his own. And on the feet, there's nobody that can stand in front of this guy at 145. And I know Diego Lopez, he's got some good submissions. He's aggressive. He's dangerous. He's a wild man early on, and he leaves himself open to being countered. I don't think anybody beats Ilia Topuria at featherweight. I've said before, I don't think I ever pick against this guy, right? If he moves up to 55, we'll have to do some more evaluating. But inside the featherweight division, there is nobody that beats Ilia Topuria. There isn't. Stylistically, yeah, Aljo or Mobsar, yeah, they could give him some problems. Diego, he's aggressive. He's got power, some submissions. I just think Ilia is that good. I think he's got the it factor. He's dangerous. He's very well-rounded. I believe that, look at Bryce Mitchell, right? Bryce Mitchell's been a pretty good fighter inside the UFC, and look what Ilia did to him. And people act like Bryce Mitchell's some bum. Like, I think he's a little bit of a clown, but, he's still a good fighter. And the resume so far, I mean, it's incredible. The KOs and this and that. I don't think anybody beats Ilia Topuria. I think that he remains the featherweight champion, and then will eventually look to move up to 155 for a double champ massive fight with, who knows, maybe Islam Makhachev or somebody. The 155-pound champ. Currently, it's Islam Makhachev. He will be defending his title against Arman Tsarukyan in the rematch at UFC 311. I think Islam, by the end of 2025, is still the champion. I don't think anybody beats this guy, and I will say this. Islam's two hardest challenges, in my opinion, are Arman Tsarukyan in the rematch, which I still think Islam wins the fight, and I do think that he will find a finish this time, right? I think the first time around, there's a lot of truth to that, right? Where he kind of underestimated Arman, didn't know a lot about him, maybe overlooked him a little bit, right? And I do know Arman has outstanding submission defense, right? His striking's improved. He's got good power. I mean, the dude's he's a solid dude, man. Like he's a ball of muscle. He's just a powerful guy, and he's a hard guy to deal with. And I think Arman has made all of the correct adjustments to go in there and give Islam a problem. However, I think that the difference is if the grappling cancels out, I still think Islam is the better grappler. Islam is the better striker, right? His hands have gotten really good. He's starting to find his way on the feet. He's setting up high kicks like he did on Alexander Volkanovski. He's a dangerous, dangerous fighter. I think Islam Makhachev is coming into his own. I don't think anybody in the division beats him. And his hardest fight outside of Arman Tsarukyan, in my opinion, would be if Ilia Topuria moves up to lightweight to take on Islam Makhachev, whether that's Ilia vacating and just becoming a 55er full-time or, coming up for a double champ fight. I believe Ilia Topuria would be a very, very hard fight for Islam. But outside of Arman, I don't think anybody beats Makhachev. And I think that he is able to beat Arman at UFC 311. I think that Islam stays the 155 champ. And I also think that maybe towards the end of the year or early 2026, we see him move up to 170 pounds and fight for a double champ opportunity. Now, I think that that's going to depend on, they've kind of danced and played around with the idea of fighting Belal. I don't think that happens. I don't think that they're going to go that route, but it's going to depend on what happens at welterweight. But I do believe in the near future, we see Islam move up for his rightful double champ opportunity. He gave Volk 2 chances. I think that he absolutely has earned the opportunity to move up and defend and try to win that title, especially with another defense over Arman. Going to be hard to deny him any longer. Moving on to welterweight, 170-pound champion. Right now we have Belal Muhammad. He won the title over Leon Edwards at UFC 304. That was what I called in my UFC awards video the title fight performance of the year. It was a one-sided domination. It was a fight that really got to show everybody just how good Belal is. And he was supposed to fight Shavkat, right? He was supposed to fight Shavkat UFC 310. Belal got hurt, had to pull out. So we had Shavkat versus Ian Gary, and now we have basically a true number one contender, which will be Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I believe that we see him versus Belal next in, I don't know, maybe summer of 2025. I don't know when they will get that fight on the books, but I do believe that Belal Muhammad, come the end of 2025, will still be the champion. Guys, I said after UFC 304, if that version of Belal shows up or a more improved version of Belal in the rest of his, career, nobody's beating this guy. Nobody in the welterweight division is beating this guy. And I really think that win over Sean Brady is one of those wins that has just aged like fine wine, because Sean Brady, outside of the loss to Belal, has just been an absolute force. He's got great grappling, very good submissions, and he's got a very good overall skill set that has caused a lot of people problems. He didn't cause Belal any issues. Belal went out there and absolutely ran right through him, and hell, he even got a finish, right? So what we've seen from Belal is the pace, the pressure, the boxing has improved tremendously, and the way that he is just able to get in your face, not give you that space, and just absolutely just melt you with pressure, volume, and mixing everything together. I don't think anybody beats this guy. And I think Shavkat basically, he got exposed a little bit, right? He got exposed a little bit against Jeff Neal, but then especially out there against Ian Gary. And make no mistake about it, Ian Machado Gary is an outstanding fighter. I'm just saying this boogeyman persona of Shavkat, or this aura that everyone's kind of going with Shavkat, I don't think it's there anymore. I think he's got power in his hands. Don't get me wrong. He's got some powerful striking and this and that. But how's he beat Belal? Right, maybe he's able to catch him with something on the feet. I doubt it. Right, he landed some good shots on Ian Gary. I know that. Belal's not Ian Gary. Belal is going to move forward. He's going to keep you guessing. He will out wrestle Shavkat Rakhmonov. The only negative to Belal's style, he doesn't have a great submission threat, right? Which I think would be a little bit of the concern that I would have coming into it for Belal is Shavkat does have finishing potential, right? He's got good submissions. He's got good power. But I think the improvements that we've seen Belal make and the way that he is able to pressure guys and make them just not fight like themselves, he just has a way to break guys. I think Belal remains the champion come the end of 2025, and maybe we see him move up to 185 at some point and try to go for some sort of double champ status. I don't know. Again, there's a lot of things that have to kind of play out. I think that this guy, the dude that showed up at UFC 304, nobody in the division is beating this guy. And I know we have some good prospects on the rise, like Carlos Prates, Joaquin Buckley's doing his thing. We got JDM. I don't think any of those guys beat Bilal because of how well-rounded he is and how he can crush the space and make you fight his fight. I don't think anybody's beaten Bilal at 170 pounds. Moving on to 185 pounds, the middleweight division. Middleweight's on fire. Middleweight's on fire, and not only is it on fire, I think that it just might be the best division in the UFC. I know people were talking about bantamweight, lightweight. The guys that have just started to break into the rankings at 185 are starting to get there. I mean, it's almost like bantamweight, where we have all these different style of fighters, and it just makes things really, really interesting with the matchmaking. But we do have the title on the line, right? We have the title on the line at UFC 312. I thought it should have been Khamzat Chimaev. We didn't get the fight. It is going to be the Sean Strickland versus DDP rematch. And I think Drakus wins the fight, right? I'm not sure what Sean Strickland, I thought he looked very good the first time against DDP, and it wasn't enough. And I see a lot of things that DDP can do differently to more convincingly win the fight and maybe even get a finish against Sean Strickland. So I think Drakus remains champion come UFC 312, but I think later in the year, maybe around summertime, maybe the fall, we see the boogeyman of the middleweight division, a guy that has a skill set that I don't believe anybody at 185 pounds will have the answer to, and that is Boers, Khamzat Chimaev. I believe Khamzat will be the middleweight champion by the year's end, and I don't know when the fight will happen. I don't know. I assume that they're going to give him a title fight next, but I believe that Khamzat has, coming up from 170 pounds, being a kind of lanky, he's not like a hugely stout guy. I know he's a big dude, right? He's got to still cut weight to make 185, but he's got this tall, lean frame to him, and he's incredibly fast, incredibly technical, and he is very, very dangerous. And people forget this guy has crazy power in the striking. He's got outstanding power in that right hand. You saw what he did to Gerald Meerschaert. You saw him drop Gilbert Burns a few times. He is a very, very dangerous striker when he has you guessing, because it's set up by the aura of the grappling. And you saw what he was able to do to Robert Whittaker. Went out there and absolutely demolished him in the first round. I thought it would take him, an extra round to get it done. And hell, he got it done in the first round. So it was just a tremendous performance by Khamzat Chimaev. But that was what I said coming into the Whittaker fight. The speed, the technicalities from a guy coming from welterweight up to 185. I just thought Chimaev was going to be a serious issue for Robert Whittaker and every single middleweight for that fact. But I do believe that we do get that massive fight between Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I do think DDP is a hard fight for Chimaev, because the problem that I think we all can see with Khamzat is, well, what if he doesn't get that fast finish? What if he doesn't just get this one-sided, grappling affair in the first round to where he's able to just dominate you and get you out of there? What happens if Dricus survives? What happens if he makes it through the round and we get into that second, third, fourth, and if we go the distance? What happens, right? Because we've seen Chimaev in some of these fights. People say, oh, he doesn't have a good gas tank. He does have a good gas tank. He just likes to take some breaks, right? He comes out he's a very fast starter. He's very aggressive. I've said he's the most entertaining grappler in UFC history. He absolutely is, right? He chases, the takedowns. He chases the finishes. And when you do that, and especially trying to, get out of there very quickly, it's going to make you tired. And he looks for those breaks on the feet and tries to kind of get his win back. DDP's not going to give you that. He's going to keep his foot on the gas, and he is a gritty, durable, tough guy. So if Khamzat doesn't get him out of there early, I definitely see DDP causing him some issues. But I think the skill set, the speed, and the technicalities in the grappling of Khamzat Chimaev are just far more advanced than most of the guys in the division. I know we got Fluffy Hernandez, who's got some good grappling and submissions. DDP does have some good submissions. We got Gregory Rodriguez on the rise, RoboCop. I just don't think anyone has the ability to stop this guy at middleweight. I just think the speed is the difference. Speed, you hear it all the time. Speed kills. Speed could be a serious problem. I think Khamzat's speed is going to be a problem for everyone in the division. I think he's the champion come the end of 2025. Moving on to 205. So we had some drama going on at light heavyweight, right? We got Alex Pereira as the champion. He's out here basically ducking Magomed Ankalaev. We don't really know what's next. Are they going to book him against a heavyweight? What are they going to do with Pereira? Are they going to book him versus Jones, him versus Aspinall? We don't really know exactly what's going to happen. But I really think that Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pineda is a massive fight. I do think the UFC eventually books this, and I think that the ducking narratives and all the things that have been built up do sell this fight and do make it a very big fight. And I believe that the UFC has been, in a way, protecting Alex Pineda. And I know that Alex is a warrior and he basically will show up and fight just about anybody, but he's also not an idiot at the same time, right? He struggled in there with Jan Blachowicz, and Jan Blachowicz is an outstanding fighter, but there's a guy who took Jan Blachowicz down. There's a guy that was able to control Jan, for a large majority of the fight, and I thought he beat Jan Blachowicz in that title fight, and that was Magomed Ankalaev. I believe if the UFC does book this fight, I believe that Ankalaev is able to beat Alex Pineda. I've said it before. I don't know in terms of the overall striking. Alex Pineda he's got fantastic kicks, very, very good knees. No one is questioning how good of a striker Pineda is. But we saw against Khalil Roundtree that southpaws can give Pineda some problems, and especially a guy like Ankalaev, who I believe has the fastest hands and some of the best boxing, if not the best boxing, in the light heavyweight division. If he lands some of the shots that Khalil lands with the hands on the feet, he absolutely will hurt Alex Pineda. And then also, he has the ability to wrestle. He has the ability to mix in the grappling and cause some issues for Pineda. So again, that kind of scrambles the brain of Pineda in the fight, because it's like, well, he could take me down. Am I going to get taken down? You can feint level changes and throw shots off of that. I believe by the end of 2025, as long as the UFC does book Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pineda, we see Ankalaev come out victorious. I think he has the style, I think that he has the tenacity, and I think that he has the skill set to go out there and beat Pineda. And people say Magomed Ankalaev's boring. You're just a Dagestani hater. You're just you're just one of those people that doesn't like Muslim fighters or whatever it is. This guy is absolutely spectacular. He's very, very dangerous. He's got very good power. He's got outstanding grappling that he basically never uses, right? He basically had to use it against Jan Blachowicz because he didn't do a very good job of checking the leg kicks and getting his leg out of the way. But he has made some adjustments, right? He's gotten into a little bit of a more of a Muay Thai stance to be a little bit lighter on that leg. We saw it against Johnny Walker. We saw it against Alexander Rakic. He's made the correct adjustments. I think style-wise, he's the hardest fight for Poatan in the division. That would be a massive fight. I think Magomed Ankalaev would. I think he would actually KO him. I really do. I think he would mix in the grappling, tire Alex out, make him a little sloppy on the feet, because Alex tends to forget about the defense at times, especially when Jan made him grapple, made him work, made him tired. His hands are even lower. Then Ankalaev can set up some of the boxing combinations, and he even has a very good high kick, right? A left high kick that Khalil Roundtree landed on Poatan as well. I think Ankalaev has the skill set to pull off the victory there against Alex Pineda. Last but not least, the heavyweight division. We got some interesting things going on at heavyweight, right? We have John Jones, who's the champion. We have Tom Aspinall, who I guess is still the interim champion or the number one contender, or, I don't know, because John technically defended the title against Stipe Miocic. So does that get rid of the interim status for Aspinall? I don't really know. But what I do know is the UFC is going to be doing everything they can to book John Jones versus Tom Aspinall in 2025. And it absolutely is what I think would be the biggest heavyweight title fight in UFC history, the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history. And I think that that's one of the biggest fights the UFC could make in the organization right now, outside of Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. I believe this is a massive fight. And I think, John Jones going out there and doing what he did to Stipe Miocic, look, that was basically just to give John a layup and build off of his legacy, because we know Dana White's obsessed with John Jones. He's like, I could go out there and beat the greatest heavyweight of all time in Stipe, who is 42 years of age, didn't even look like he wanted to be in there. And John goes out there and does what John does, right? Absolutely picked him apart. I think we see John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And if we don't, it'll be John Jones versus Pineda. They'll duck Ankalaev and then duck Aspinall. So they'll let these guys play duck, duck, goose over here and fight each other, and then both, maybe retire. At least John will. And then we don't end up getting the fight. But I think the UFC is going to make the smart investment. They're going to give John Jones his asking price, because if Tom Aspinall can go out there and beat John Jones, well, now you just built up your new heavyweight champion as John Jones departs. Or if John goes out there and beats Aspinall, what's that do for John? That probably cements him as the GOAT, is what people will think. However, if the fight happens, even if it doesn't, no matter how things line up, I believe by the end of 2025, Tommy Aspinall will be the heavyweight champion inside the UFC. I think that if him and Jon Jones fight, I think that he is the most dangerous guy that Jon could face. Jon's a little bit older now. I think Aspinall's speed and the boxing, and he does have good grappling. Don't think he's a better grappler than Jones. I will say that. And I think Jon Jones is a better overall, he has more tools, right? He has higher fight IQ, and he's got all these different things. I just think the speed and the power in the hands of Tom Aspinall is a nightmare for Jon Jones. What has given Jon issues in the past? Guys like Dominic Reyes that have good footwork and Alexander Gustafsson have good boxing, good angles, and all those kinds of things. I believe Tom Aspinall has all of that, plus the power, considering it's at heavyweight. He's a very, very dangerous guy. I think if he fights Jon Jones, he's able to win. But if they never fight, then I think that they just do, I don't know what they would do. They hit him versus a number one contender or something, and then Aspinall would win that fight and be the undisputed heavyweight champion. Either way, Tom Aspinall will be the heavyweight champion come the end of 2025. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment your thoughts below. Do you agree with my predictions for who you think the champions will be in 2025? If not, let me know who you think the champs will be in these weight classes. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.